Saints are back on the practice field today. Ross was there, joins us now. How are you, dude?
Hey, man, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Okay, let's run through, now that they're back in Metri from L.A., despite the fact that it's about 100 degrees different in temperature. What was the day like today?
Yeah, so it was kind of like going back to the regular season schedule. We had about 20 minutes of open media viewing over the course of I would say probably about an hour, 45 minutes, hour and a half of practice. And so what we saw was stretch, some individual drills, and then a little bit of like routes on air work, but not as much as we would typically see during a training camp practice where we would see drills and, more simulated work and things like that. I think we'll get a little bit more tomorrow, but for today it was a pretty limited viewing window for us.
Is that typical? Like, is that an NFL rule, or is that just Kellen Moore's decision?
I think it's Kellen Moore's decision. We saw Kevin Stefanski do the same thing up in Cleveland, where they started to change everything over to the kind of regular season schedule as they went into this final week and this final preseason week. And so I think it's something that coaches have the ability to make that decision. Not every team does, but it seems like the Saints are going to go that route, at least for today. I'll be curious to see what the rest of the week looks like, because Wednesday's practice is set to be at the Superdome, and then Thursday's practice is earlier, so that might, and Kellen Moore said that might be more of a walkthrough thing. So maybe we get more access during those days, but interesting that it was pretty limited just here on Tuesday.
All right, Ross, they did release an updated depth chart. What were the big standouts there, big takeaways?
Yeah, I think the two biggest things for me were just looking at how the Khalen Saunders trade kind of impacted everything. So the Saints traded Khalen Saunders over to Jacksonville, which Kellen Moore did confirm today that the two teams were already in conversation before they actually played against one another on Sunday. So the fact that the trade came down hours after became a little bit of a joke for them, but it wasn't like, oh, hey, this guy's not going to make this roster, this guy's not going to make this roster, you guys want to swap? It didn't happen during the game. So it was all early conversation that just kind of happened to overlap and time out the way that it did. But I think that the big thing that we saw that trade's ripple impact was Christian Boyd, the second-year defensive tackle, kind of left up to being that immediate backup on the depth chart. Still unofficial, but immediate backup on the depth chart behind Devon Gottschall, which replicates what we've seen so far throughout the preseason. He's a guy that's fit really well into this new Brandon Staley defense, and so not super surprising to see him make that jump. And then the other thing that we saw was Luke Fortner, who the Saints acquired in that trade, becoming the immediate backup on that unofficial depth chart right behind Eric McCoy. When we've seen Torres Simpkins, the undrafted free agent rookie, doing it very, very well there. Now, the Saints have deviated from that center depth chart a ton here for the preseason, so we'll see if they hold to that. But those are the two biggest adjustments. Other than that, everything else kind of stayed the same, including a three-man quarterback battle, apparently.
I'll get to the quarterback in a second. You like the trade?
Yeah, I like the trade. I mean, look, a lot of guys over at Jacksonville kind of said that Luke Fortner wasn't necessarily on track to make the roster. Here in New Orleans, it didn't feel like Khalen Saunders was on track to make the roster. He was actually going to be off of my next 53-man roster projection over at LouisianaSports.net, which will come out later on this week. But, now I don't have to worry about it. He's not going to be on the team anyway. They traded him away. So now they basically said, okay, there's two guys here that might not make each of these rosters at positions where both teams have a lot of depth. So they swapped so that the teams got players where they didn't have a lot of depth. So now those guys have a better opportunity to make the rosters where they are.
Ross Jackson's with us. He's on Twitter at Ross Jackson NOLA. Give him a follow there. Read him at LouisianaSports.net. Of course, you can listen or watch LockedOn Saints. Okay, you mentioned quarterback, three-man battle. Actions speak louder than words. You can put Jake Haener on there, but he doesn't play in either the preseason game or the second preseason game. We know what it is. So what do you think, Ross, is the probability of Haener making the 53 or cutting him and trying to re-sign him back to the practice squad?
I think there's a good chance that he still makes it. If you cut him, he goes to waivers, and so there's a chance that other teams might be interested there, especially with kind of the confidence and the smarts that he brings to the position. He has a lot of value in any quarterback room, even though he might not see a field. He still has a lot of value in any of those quarterback rooms. So I wouldn't be shocked to see the Saints keep all three on the roster. Kellen Moore's offense with the Philadelphia Eagles last year kept three quarterbacks on the roster. It's not an uncharacteristic thing to do in the NFL now. So I think there's a good chance that he still makes the roster and that they keep him around. I think Kellen Moore is kind of preempting that too with his consistently making sure that everybody includes Jake Haener in the quarterback conversation. We know better, but I think that he's doing the right thing in terms of making sure that all three guys that are likely to make his roster in 2025, feel a little bit of that support from him. And so all signs kind of point to me, him still making the roster. Although, with a guy like Hunter Deckers, who they also really, really like there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts that could happen from that. But I think as of right now, I still have Jake Haener on the roster.
Eros, we were having the conversation. Another one is about Taysom. They, of course, could save $10 million if they cut him this year. And he's he certainly will start the season on PUP, and remains to be seen if he'd be available at any point this season. Thought on what they do with Taysom?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's just that they keep him on PUP and they see if there's an opportunity to get him on the field at any point on the season. They seem pretty confident that he can get on the field at some point during the year. It just doesn't sound like that's going to be right away. I mean, Kellen Moore said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said something to the effect of that, he and Foster Morrow, for instance, both guys not close to seeing the field anytime soon. And so I think for both of them, starting on an injury list going into the year and kind of revisiting things later on in the season make a lot of sense. The Saints could save some money that they could then roll over potentially into next year, but I don't know that they're necessarily going to be super quick to rush off of him while he's still injured. Give him the opportunity to rehab, let him get back on the field, and then see what you can do from there, and then decide where you want to go after that. So I wouldn't be shocked to see the Saints go that route, but we'll see. It's a tricky one. It's hard to manage something like that where you have a guy that could be so essential to your team, that could help you run the football, that could help keep some pressure off of your young quarterback, and that could be an asset to your young quarterback too, by the way. With him being injured and not being able to go towards the end of the season, that's a challenging sort of situation to navigate.
A couple of more. They haven't yet named a starter for Saturday. Any idea what you think they will do or what you think they should do? Take it either direction.
Yeah, I think honestly, if you can give both of these guys, like if you're gonna use the third preseason game as a dress rehearsal, for instance, which a lot of teams do, to where they get some of their starters out there and all, or get their entire starting unit out there for a couple of drives. If you were able to get both of these quarterbacks at least a drive with the first team units, I think there's value there. Like neither of these guys have taken snaps with Eric McCoy on the field. Rattler did last year in the second half against Washington, and then for 7 plays against Green Bay. But as we wrote over at LouisianaSports.net, like Spencer Rattler's got no snaps with all 4. Eric McCoy, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Alvin Kamara on the field, and only 2 with both Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, both in that Tampa Bay game last year. And so I think getting both of these guys some exposure to the unit that they would be expected to play with in week 1 could be really valuable for this quarterback battle. Now, they get that, don't be wrong, in practices, but seeing at least one drive in sort of a dress rehearsal situation for both of these guys up against Denver would make a lot of sense.
All right, he's Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson NOLA. We're going to get him on Twitter, X. What's the schedule? So you said walkthrough. So for the rest of the week, they'll have a walkthrough on the practice tomorrow, walkthrough on Thursday. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they're basically treating Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday with a Saturday game like they would treat Wednesday, Thursday, Friday with a Sunday game.
Okay.
And so that last practice before the game is usually a walkthrough, and then they'll do a walkthrough the next day typically. But they'll have kind of these 2 bigger practice days today and tomorrow. And tomorrow, Kellen Moore said that they'll be out of the Superdome and they'll do some scripted plays, and then they'll have their opportunity to do some more of those call-it periods that they like to do, where the back calling plays in situations and scenarios. So I expect tomorrow to be kind of the biggest of the worst days this week.
All right. You can read him over at LouisianaSports.net. Listen or watch LockedOn Saints. He's Ross Jackson. Thank you, man.
Thank you, bud. Appreciate you. Take care. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.
All right. Be well. Saints getting ready for preseason game number 3. As we get closer to that game, we'll talk later in the week about who has the most on the line as far as a roster spot. We talked about Taysom last hour, and he's probably right. I mean, he'll probably stay on PUP and see if they can activate him at some point. It's probably what the Saints will do. I don't think that's the sensible thing to do. Probably not going to contribute much for you on a team that's not going to be very good, and you could save $10 million against cap this year. It's the prudent business decision would be to cut him. I just don't think that's what the Saints are going to do. But we'll talk a bit more about third preseason game, who has the most on the line, as we get closer to the weekend. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.